First of all, I invite Aaron and Joe to, if there are any implications that you see, that things that we can learn from all of this, I invite you to offer them, and then Kimberly and I have a few that we'll offer as well.
Joe, would you like to go first? Since I've been.
No, you certainly can do that.
Okay. That's a great question, Foster. I think part of the thing for me is just letting people know that they should. I feel I don't want to live in fear, and letting others know that they've got to carry on the message and the wonderful work they're doing and not live in fear. That's part of it for me with what people can do is, first of all, not be fearful. We can't live in fear. So that would be my first thing. Yeah. That's an important one.
Well, that's certainly an important principle to follow. I think it's also important to recognize that, first of all, that these events are occurring, so to be aware that that's a possibility, and as a result of that, take reasonable precautions. Lock your house, make sure you have a security system, and just be alert. If you believe in firearms, as I do, you could you can take firearms training and have a weapon in your home. But you need to be trained to do that and store it properly so no one gets injured. So these are all simple things that you can do. But I think if you focus on this and become paranoid and obsessive about it, it's really going to distract from your life mission. So I think to be sensible and cautious is the reasonable strategy. I think the take-home lesson for me.
Yeah, thank you for that. The Sufis have an expression which I've always found helpful, which is have faith in Allah, but tie your camel to the post. And I think that we can learn from this, as you both are saying, to take it seriously. And one of the challenges that Goa and Kimberly and I have in working with a lot of the breakthrough innovators in our Thrive Connect network is getting them to take the security seriously enough to have protection, have a security system, have bodyguards in critical situations that are apt to be risky. So I totally agree that it can be paralyzing to live in fear. And the best way I find not to live in fear is be true to your mission and at the same time address whatever concerns you have in a practical manner. I want to add that for me, one of the major implications is that these patterns of assassinations are unfortunate and tragic confirmations that these breakthrough innovators have something that is of great value to humanity. A lot of people who haven't actually ever seen a free energy device and are very skeptical about it, one of the things I can say to them is, do you think that the shadow government or whoever they are, do you think they would really be spending all the time and the money and taking the personal risks to raid these particular laboratories or even assassinate people if they didn't think that they had something real, if they were just a bunch of hoaxers and scammers? And I've visited, many energy inventors, and again, it's the ones who are most successful who are the ones that are most apt to get harassed, because the powers that be, they have a lot of information on this stuff. They can recognize the real stuff because they've usually stolen patents, they've raided laboratories, and so they can actually recognize the real stuff, and that's who tends to get raided. And I think it can also be a reminder to us to stick together, get to know one another and collaborate, share resources, share security advice, and then collaborate to optimize the chances of success, and particularly share strategies. There are a whole spectrum of strategies for getting these things safely out, and it runs from traditional venture capital from on the one end all the way to open source. Just be compensated by someone if possible to just dump the knowledge on the internet, because then you're no longer the sole keeper of the knowledge, and then there's no purpose in taking you out. It actually brings attention to your breakthrough. So we've gone into some of those strategies in other sessions, but these are some of the implications that I think that if we integrate them and learn from them, then some of these innovators will not have died in vain. Kimberly, anything you want to add to that?
Well, you know, for me, a big part of it is for sure the being informed and incorporating the knowledge into, because, you know, absolutely not living from fear is where it's at. And I find that the more informed I am, the better choices I can make. And I remember when we first came out with Thrive, and our security folks said, okay, you can't eat anything that anybody just gives you, right, when you're out and about in the world. And it was so, you know, people would come really graciously and generously with gifts they made for us, you know, like, oh, some offering. And I thought, it takes getting used to, but I understand, of course, there are people fed into the field here, given what we're doing, who are not going to be safe for us. And so just as a blanket, I'm going to make some changes in how I relate to things. I think of my phone as a spy in the room. Like, I just had to switch from thinking of it as a communication device to realizing that it is a spy in the room. And so I don't do things with the phones in the room if I don't want to be communicating that to anybody. So I think just kind of getting used to that. And then on the deepest level, for me, in terms of fear, it was to realize that I believe we're in times where not speaking out is equally dangerous. I think we become a little more targeted potentially as being spokespeople, but the reason that we're spokespeople is because everyone is at serious risk. And if we're not speaking out, you know, we run the risk of just being chipped and medicated and enslaved. That's really what's at stake here. So to me, the thought of just taking that quietly out of fear is like, then they've already accomplished what they've set out to do, and I'm not willing to agree to that. So I feel so much more empowered as I speak out and stand to what I believe, and I also do it, you know, I really stay up on, and I'm deeply grateful to the security experts we have on our team who can keep me educated about, I mean, just the ways that the surveillance is coming at us in all the time through every little handy thing you sign up for. You know, I happen to read a lot of the terms and conditions of these online things, and it's sobering to say the least. So I do think in terms of what's at stake, and that really motivates me to speak up. And I think the other part of it is that, you know, courage is it's a heart-based experience. I mean, both the base of the language, cor, from courage is Latin for heart. And I think that it just feels so good to be grounded in my heart and find there the courage to move forward in alignment with my purpose and my passion. So I feel grateful. And the other thing I have to say is the people that I've been able to meet who also speak out, like our lovely guests today, it's so heartwarming and inspiring and encouraging to realize how many awake people there are speaking out. And it's one of the things that happened from putting Thrive out and having it in the languages and stuff. We just hear from people from all over the world. And there really are a lot of awake people doing great things and speaking out. So we're not alone, and it's important to remember that.
Thank you, Kimberly. Well, in a minute, we're going to move on to a discussion of what can we do about this type of situation. But before doing that, I want to go, if you can bring on Tom Bradstreet. Jeff Bradstreet's brother, Tom, and his wife are joining in the call today, and they said they'd be willing to come on and share a little bit about their experience. And Jeff Bradstreet was a real inspiration to me and continues to be. And what happened to him only makes my resolve stronger to bring out the truth in all of these different areas. But my heart just so goes out to the loved ones and families and friends of the people who have been specifically affected by this tragic agenda. So, Goa, is Tom available?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming
yes,
through
there
great.
he is. Great. Tom, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you. I am here with my wife, Candace, and we've been sitting here listening to you guys, and we agree with you, everything that you said about the way that, we can't live in fear, we can't create this paranoia, we have to empower ourselves in our level or our sphere of influence. We need to get out there and talk more and share this. I had Andy Wakefield tell me, who's a doctor that's involved in autism, tell me that if you share everything and keep it right out in front of you, you have nothing to worry about. No longer are you valuable because your information's out there. So, the information that we have and we've discovered through this investigation, we share it all. We want everybody to know the medical research and everything that's happened out there and the work that my brother did. And, we share it with the people that we know intimately. And when you look at the science, there's no disputing the science.
Yeah.
And it really makes sense. And then you work yourself back and go, well, why is this information being withheld from me? Well, then they really don't want me to get well. And then you start to change the way you think about things. Mm-hmm. And now you can move forward and you can start to really become an educated decision maker in your own health, your own security, and your family. And that's something that's really brought this to our life in the last 9 months, obviously.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. I want to ask both you and Candace, did you sense anything before this happened or leading up to it? Was there concern on your part or on Jeff's part? Oftentimes, I know I've talked to rape victims and so forth, and they sense something before it happened. Was there any of that amongst your family? Well,
Jeff played his cards really close.
Yeah.
He had, without getting involved in a lot of history, and Joe, I'm sure working in the medical community, as soon as he would come out with a good idea, somebody would take it and go make money off of it, and he really didn't have the opportunity. So he kept his cards very close to him. He was speaking at the end that to several of his peers that he was concerned, but not afraid, because he was aware of what was going on in the community and what was going on over in Europe. He realized that he was a high-profile individual in the world of autism. He had testified many times against the vaccine companies and was in Washington and dealt with all those discussions that were there. So, I mean, he was no dummy. He was making plans for the future. He was moving forward. He had just finished the Autism One conference in Chicago with lots of great information that was released, but still a lot more new stuff coming. Mm-hmm. So as far as him running, afraid, we had no sense of that at all.
Okay. And Candace, when you and Tom are talking with friends or even strangers about this whole situation, what's it like in terms of being believed if you voice concerns about the hidden agendas behind an obviously very suspicious death?
Right. It's interesting to say the least, because obviously we, just like yourselves, have friends who definitely are awake. I call it being awake. And then there are those that you talk to and you explain this, particularly with Jeff and what happened, and it's almost as though they don't want to believe it. I think for some people, they know it's going to mean a huge change in their lives, and some just choose to live in denial. But what's making me excited is there are a lot of people becoming awake and aware.
Yes, thank you. One more question for you. What have you found? I mean, it must be challenging for your friends and family to know how, in a way, to relate to you after such a tragedy. What have you found is supportive? How can other people, how have they related to you that you have found to be effective?